Right, welcome along to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. Raf Diallo here. You can watch or listen in every week on RT.ie or wherever you get your podcasts, and you can subscribe on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. The SSC Airtricity Women's Premier Division kicks off this Saturday, and I've been speaking to former Ireland international Méabh De Búrca, which we'll bring to you later on. We'll have live Champions League coverage tonight, and we'll also review a partially weather-affected back-to-back round of LOI fixtures. So I'm joined by former Ireland international Treacy and RTÉ Sports James McMahon. Hope you're both keeping well. What we're going to do, we're going to start on John O'Shea, who is taking interim charge of the Republic of Ireland men's team for the friendlies later this month against Belgium and Switzerland. And in a press conference on Monday, FAI Director of Football Mark Canham confirmed that the new manager is going to be announced in early April. The backroom team for these two games upcoming are Crystal Palace coach Paddy McCarthy, and he's going to be the assistant, with Brian Kerr coming back as a technical advisor, and then Glenn Whelan as an assistant coach. And Jim, it's been a very convoluted process, but I suppose as we got closer, as we were getting closer to do these two friendlies, perhaps it wasn't a surprise that the FAI decided to go with the interim solution, given that they seem to be quite confident that they'll have somebody in April, but that there are obviously contractual situations to deal with first.
Yeah, Raf. Well, I mean, as long as they don't make the announcement on April Fool's Day, or they might be completely leading us down the garden path. Yeah, it seems quite a long while, Raf, since it was the 22nd of November that was the termination of Stephen Kenny's time as Ireland manager. And since then, like even before Stephen was prior to Stephen's last days in the job, you know, people were looking ahead and talking about who they would like the next manager to be, and the name Lee Carsley was on most people's lips. And then Lee Carsley was the favorite, but then Lee Carsley sort of drifted out in the market, if we were to look at it from a betting point of view, and then other names were mentioned. There was about a month ago there, one Sunday afternoon, everybody was talking about Chris Coleman. Chris Coleman was the name, and some people were not happy. Some people were a bit iffy about Chris Coleman, in spite of the fact that he had a good record with Wales. And then there were other names like Gus Poyet, now the Slaven Bilic. There was even, we were going down under, and well down under, to Anthony Hudson, New Zealander, and his name was mentioned. And it wasn't surprising, as you said, Raf, that the FAI have gone for this interim arrangement with John O'Shea leading the team. And I think most people are quite happy about that. And he seems to have assembled a very decent backroom team as well. And I think most people in the football family in Ireland would be happy that Brian Kerr is involved in it as well. But now that the interim team is in place, it seems to be that Lee Carsley's name is now coming back more to the fore again, that he's shortening in the betting. And there's perhaps an expectation, we may be wrong, we may be right, we don't know, that Lee Carsley will be named manager come the first week in April. But as I said, we may be wrong, but we may be right. But if it's not Carsley, then who the hell is it?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. Now, Mark Canham, I'll just play a clip of him from the press conference yesterday, who, just to give us the timeline. Obviously, if it is Lee Carsley, he's still in charge of the England under-21s, but he has Euro qualifiers coming up against Luxembourg and Azerbaijan at the end of this month, and then presumably he could be free if it is him. But let's listen to Mark Canham first, very briefly.
So, as I've said before, the process has been ongoing for a period of time, and we've been given a series of updates quite recently, actually. But we're really near the end of the process. That's obviously confidential, so I can't answer your question directly, unfortunately. But we're at a really advanced stage of the process, and for different practical reasons, and including contracts, we can't confirm that until early April.
Right, so that is Mark Canham there with the process. And Keith, obviously, this is going to be a short-term gig in terms of the managerial point of view for John O'Shea, who, of course, you would have played alongside during your own time with Ireland. It doesn't really give him much scope for, to put a bit of a stamp on the squad. So it's really just, I guess it'll be a case of picking players who are in form, and almost they can use this as an audition for Carsley or whoever the next manager turns out to be.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, Raf, and I'm not sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing, and I mean that in terms of approaching the two games that are coming up. If John was to want the gig long term, I'm hearing a lot of work about a framework and having the coach within the way the FAI want to see this Republic of Ireland play. And that to me is sort of going into battle with your hands tied behind your back. You know, Stephen Kenny's done this. He's banged that drum. We played football and we've got absolutely nowhere with it. So the fact that John is not going to be the long-term manager, or looks like he's not going to be the long-term manager, he gives them that little bit of freedom to be able to say, do you know what, I'm going to do what I want to do here and I'm going to try and win the games of football. It doesn't have to be pretty, but he doesn't want 2 losses on his record. I know it means nothing in hindsight, but I know John personally, I know he's a very, very proud Irish man, and he's already said how happy he is to get this job, albeit on a short-term basis. And I'm hearing things from him already in little snippets of interviews talking about mixing it up to win games of football. So the things I'm hearing from John are getting me interested. He's a very clever man. You don't play 118 games for your country if you're not a good footballer. You don't stick around at Manchester United for that length of time. You don't play in that many different positions if you're not a clever footballer. So him, Glenn Whelan as well, will know what he's doing. Played, I think he's 91 caps for Ireland. That's a huge amount of number of caps for Ireland. And yeah, Paddy McCarthy, somebody I would have played against a long time ago as well. So those 3 heads together for me will come up with a plan for us to be competitive in games. And when you look that they're going to be overseen by the Brian Kerr, you know, and I've said this before, everybody's saying to me, the FAI initiated the talks with Brian Kerr. Isn't it brilliant? The FAI deserve a pat on the back. They do, but this is more of, it's about time rather than well done. You know, Brian should never have been out of Irish football or out of the FAI for that long. He shouldn't have been. His knowledge, his wealth of experience should have always had him in the door. And the fact that he hasn't was a real it was a real negative. But thankfully now the FAI are forward thinking. You know, they're getting onto the same page. And yeah, look, I like the mixture. It's not by any means anybody's first choice, but I like the mixture for the first 2 games. And it gets me, I'm excited to go to the Aviva at the end of March and think, how are we going to set up? What are we going to do here? Because, as I say, I respect those 4 people who are coming in the door massively within the game. So I'm very interested to see how they go about it, Raf.
Yeah, let's listen to John O'Shea discussing this backroom team with Tony O'Donoghue.
One manager, though, that you played under, were successful under, and you brought back into the fold, as it were, is Brian Kerr. Tell me why you decided to bring Brian back.
Yeah, look, it was to be fair, it was a collaborative approach in terms of the conversation I had with Mark beforehand. Obviously, you're thinking about these 2 games, and I just thought the influence that and the enthusiasm, because when I still speak to Brian, that I know he has, and the passion that he has, and ultimately his football brain that he has as well, that it'd be great to have involved for the camp, and I think it's going to be a boost for everyone involved.
What exactly will you have him doing? He said he'd go and collect the footballs behind the goals for you.
I know, he'll be fit at the end of the camp. No, look, he's going to have a lot to do, because obviously over the next couple of weeks everyone will be getting out to games, seeing players, catching up with players, giving feedback on how people are performing, and then also build up to international games, little bits of advice along the way, and obviously his football eye will be very important.
I saw Paddy McCarthy at the weekend with Crystal Palace. What can Paddy bring to you and to the Republic of Ireland setup for these 2 games?
Yeah, a current eye on obviously Premier League standards in terms of what it takes to be in the Premier League setup, coaching players at elite level, obviously the Premier League level, and obviously having a passion from an early age to be involved with Ireland as well too. So lots of those things combined together. Obviously working with impressive people in his career too, obviously under Roy Hodgson for a long spell too. So he's going to bring lots of experience for a young age in terms of a coach, but ultimately a very good man.
All right, so John O'Shea there, and of course this is only for the 2 games. There is a sense potentially that he could be part of the next management setup, regardless of who it is, Keith. But you mentioned Brian Kerr and that he shouldn't have been out of football. I think anybody who knows him or has spent any time in his company, he's arguably the most passionate person about Irish football that you will find, and his knowledge of players, not just within the Irish game, but like I know you do punditry with him from time to time, but his knowledge of, say, European world players is immense. Do you feel that now that he's sort of back in the fold, even temporarily, that this is an opportunity that in some sort of guise, and he's technical advisor at the moment, that this should actually be more of a long-term thing, and that there should be a space carved out for him there?
Yeah, I think so, and I think that's a lot of people are asking me. You know, people on the street are stopping me and saying, "Oh, Brian Kerr's in with the FEI now, isn't it brilliant?" And people are saying, "Is he staying beyond the 2 games?" And the answer to that is we're not too sure yet. But I think he should, Raf. I think he should be in there. You know, John said it there. He's been around. Everybody knows him. Everybody respects him. And you can ask Brian anything. You know, I've done little bits of punditry with him, and you throw a name at him, somebody who's gone to the continent, and there's no Google, there's no go and research this. It's in the back of his head, and you don't get that. You know, this is just a man who watches hours and hours and hours of football, and he does it with a smile on his face. And every time I've come across him in football circles and punditry circles, he's been nothing but an absolute gentleman to me, and always holds the higher standards to himself. So again, you know, very few people have anything bad to say about him. And I listened to John O'Shea there, and the word he used about Paddy McCarthy, standards. He'll bring Premier League standards over. That's exactly what we need. We need standards. We need to get it to a level and say, lads, this is what we need. It's required. If you can give it to us, brilliant. You'll be in and around it. If you aren't, get out the door, because we don't need people here. We're going to be half-hearted about it. So I'm really happy. And yeah, to answer your question, I'm hopeful that Brian is going to stay, but I'm not too sure. Let's just take it a game at a time and see how it goes, because we all know how quickly things can change in football.
Yeah, and in regards to Lee Carsley, obviously a lot of the titles and headlines are sort of it's Lee Carsley back in the frame. That seems to be the wording. But then at the weekend, as Jim alluded to at the beginning there was the whole Slaven Bilic angle that kind of burst out of nowhere. So this was an exclusive in the Mirror, suggested he was a front runner, and then David Sneyd in 42 on Sunday had done a bit of digging, had an update in the sense that Bilic had not had any contact with the FAI, and there have been no talks, and is not aware of any interest. And it doesn't look like it will be Bilic in the end. He has a job in Saudi Arabia at the moment. I think contract runs out in 2025. I don't know if you saw this at the weekend, Keith, but what did you make of it when that name was floated? Because he's been in and around the Premier League, and he is charismatic, but he has had a mixed career in terms of success levels.
Yeah, he's a very mixed career in terms of a manager. I believe he was the Croatian manager when I got
me last. At the beginning, yeah.
Came across him, and he's one of those characters. You see him down the tunnel, and he's instantly recognisable. You know what he is. He's standing there having a cigarette, and when I heard his name, I thought maybe there's something here, because he's one of those that, again, taken away from his football, you want to go and see in the Aviv. You want to see what type of team he's going to play, how he's going to go about it. But straight away, you're thinking, has he got his finger on the pulse of the Irish setup at the minute? Does he know about, you know, how we're trying to play football, that it didn't really work, and now maybe we need to move on to another thing? Or is he coming in totally fresh, thinking, well, I want to play this way, and this is how we go? But when I heard the Saudi Arabia thing, Raf, that he's over there working at the minute, and the finances involved over there, I thought, it's an on-runner. The FEI are never going to pluck him out of there. So, yeah, it sort of heated up with me straight away, and then Saudi Arabia came into the mix, and I thought, nah, it's never, ever going to happen. And obviously, it's been dampened down pretty quickly as well. So, yeah, it initially got me interested, but worried at the same time, and probably happier that it looks like we're going to pass up on Slaven Bilic than actually pursue him.
Yeah, but in any case, you know, with all the speculation, in about a month's time, we will finally know. And I think at Jim, as you said, hopefully it'll be after April Fool's Day, so we're not sort of
left it on the 1st of April. No,
no, definitely not.
Well, I think that's a bank holiday anyways, Raf, so I don't think there'll be any big announcements that day. So.
Yeah. But anyway, the Women's Premier Division kicks off this Saturday, and yesterday I was speaking to former Ireland and Galway footballer Méabh De Búrca about what to expect, and also about the Girls in Green's 2-0 defeat to Wales in Tala last week. All right, I am delighted to be joined by former Ireland international Méabh De Búrca, and this is ahead of the new SSE Airtricity Women's Premier Division season that kicks off on Saturday, with Shelbourne taking on Sligo, Shamrock Rovers away at DLR Waves, Cork City hosting the champions Peamount, Bows at Wexford, and then the FAI Cup winners at Lone hosting Galway United. And then Treaty United don't get their season underway until the second round of games against DLR Waves. But Méabh, thanks for coming on. And before we preview the new season, I think it'd be just just interesting to get your thoughts on Ireland's defeat against Wales last week. Of course, it was a 2-0 defeat in a friendly, coming off the back of a very impressive display in Italy against a higher ranked team. And now, we've the draw coming up Tuesday afternoon, which will come up after this podcast is recorded, of course, for the Euro qualifiers. So we'll have to wait and see what Ireland get. But just what did you make of the performance, and would you read too much into it?
Yeah, it was a bit disappointing, I suppose, because they'd been off such a back of a good run of results, the 6 games, obviously, in the Nations League. And then, like I said, an impressive draw away to Italy. But yeah, just kind of, I think it came against the run of form maybe, and just things just didn't seem to go their way, particularly in the first half. I thought it was just overall, I suppose, sloppy play maybe, and it seemed to be infectious. Like once one person did a bad pass, it seemed to kind of spiral then onto the next as well. So yeah, hopefully it's something like just a bump in the road, and hopefully they can kind of get over it. And, it's not the worst time to have a bump like that, and then, like I said, just looking forward now to the draw, which is going to be really exciting to see who Ireland get.
Yeah, now in terms of the new season, of course, Peamount are going in as the reigning champions, but they did lose the President's Cup against Athlone, losing 3-0 on Saturday. This time last year, they had lost a lot of their key players, the likes of Anya O'Gorman, Stephanie Roach had moved on to the returning Shamrock Rovers, who had been away from the league for so long, and also young internationals like Abby Larkin. They have the challenge of also being one of the few standalone clubs within the league as well. So coming into this year now, off the back of, I suppose, surprising people by winning their 3rd title in 5 years. What do you like? Do you think they're in a position of strength that they are ready to push on and defend the title they won last year?
I think so. Well, I think it probably would have been a bit more confident before the results in the President's Cup, but like that, I suppose kind of it was essentially a pre-season game almost in a way that, but at the same time, when there's silverware at stake, you do expect that both teams will put on their the best performance they can, and yeah, that wouldn't have been what they were expecting, but they have kind of. They've kept, I think, the majority of their players, and they've kind of 3 young internationals like Erin McLaughlin, Freya Healy and Ellen Dolan really kind of, I think, are going to maybe come into their own this season. And they also have Sean Byrne brought in as assistant from Bowes, so he should bring a lot of experience too, and maybe just, different elements to the kind of coaching staff there. And I think they'll be expecting themselves, and they'll be expecting to retain it, but I think they will come up against a lot of challenges this season.
Yeah, one of those is going to be Shamrock Rovers. Obviously, last year was one in which they were sort of getting settled into the new league, and I remember talking to Collie O'Neill at the launch last year, and I think he wasn't talking about silverware straight away. It was get used to the league and then maybe push on this year. They've largely kept the same squad together, albeit it seems to be a smaller one than last year. And the other challenge they've had is the accommodation crisis as well, is something that Collie O'Neill has talked about in terms of a challenge in terms of adding to the squad. So when you look at how they look at the moment, you think they're ready to push on and, I suppose, close that gap, which was 6 or 7 points last year?
Yeah, I think they'll definitely be one of the favourites, if not the favourite almost, even though that's kind of, that's how they look at it anyway, because they have such quality within their ranks. And last year, first year in the league, well, first season as Shamrock Rovers, they were obviously in it before as well as Shamrock Rovers, but I suppose they'll hope that they kind of will gel, like I said, together, and that maybe they'll get more of a kind of connection now on the pitch, because it always takes a while to kind of embed that. Even the coach stuff, Collie, and that their style of play and all that does take a while, no matter how good the players you have are. So I think they'll really be right up there come the end of the season.
Yeah, and then Shelburne, it's all changed with Noel King having stepped away after what was a fairly successful period in terms of winning silverware, and Owen Weirin has come in as manager. Pearl Slattery, speaking ahead of the new season, she's talked about freshness and new ideas, but again, usually a strong squad there, but are they ready again also to be in that mix, to be in and alongside Peamount and Shamrock Rovers?
I think so. I mean, Shells are always thereabouts, and like Pearl mentioned there, they have youth coming through as well, and with Owen at the helm, he'll have brought through a lot of those through the academy as well. And she's probably been a bit humble there, because they also have a lot of experience and leadership through Pearl, as well as Noelle Murray and Rachel Graham as well. They've been around the league for ages, so they do know what it takes as well to win, and I think that's really important. You can have young, fresh players too, but it is important as well to have the right balance there too.
Yeah, and then Athlone coming in as cup winners, so that's obviously going to be a boost as well. We often see teams picking up a bit of silverware and then pushing on. Kieran Kilduff came in halfway through last season, did a brilliant job with them. But do you look at them, even with, I suppose, the momentum of winning the President's Cup on top of it, as a club ready to push on? And when you look at the squad that they have and how many of the players they've kept.
Yeah, I think so. Now I think it could be Athlone's year, to really push on and kind of do a real challenge for the league really at the end of the season. And like you said, Kieran this will be his first kind of full season, so at least he'll have had a pre-season to work through whatever elements he might want to introduce. It's always a bit tough kind of coming in, although we did well in the second half of the season. It's good to have, then it'll be like almost a new management, in that they'll have the whole season to work with the players as well. And the same thing goes there in terms of Laurie Ryan, like leadership as well. She brings a lot. And former players with Galway, WSC in the past, the likes of Chloe Singleton, who got 2 goals the last night, they'll be really, I think, looking to drive Athlone forward.
Yeah, and Wexford Youths, I suppose we could say 2023 was one of underachievement for them, given the talent they have and generally where they are in the league. And is it a case of just trying to get that attack to click this year? Because they've Rihanna Jarrett, Emily Corbett, Kylie Murphy. I suppose at their best, they should be challenged at the top end.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think they went through maybe a bad patch last year, and momentum has a lot to do with that as well. And, the broken season with the World Cup break, and, maybe it just didn't go for them. Once you kind of have a string of losses, it's really hard, to come back after that. So I think maybe, luck mightn't have been on their side either last year. And, they've, like I said, they do have all those players you mentioned as well to keep driving the club forward. But I think, under the new Wexford FC as well, they might kind of have a new energy about them. And like I said, if they're attacking, threats combine the way they should, then they could be, a scary prospect for any of the other defences in the league.
Yeah, and in regards to some of the dark horses and clubs that are capable of pushing on, I guess from that sort of mid-table area, Galway United did really well last year. Bows for a time started really well and then maybe tailed off a little bit, and they've a new manager now in Ken Kiernan, and a couple of additions like Tegan Ruddy and Alna McAvoy. And there's also DLR Waves, who tend to, you usually are in a reasonably good position in the league. So out of those three, who would you tip to sort of push on? I suppose you'd have your Galway hat on as well.
Yeah, it's hard not to. I've been in touch with Lindsay, and she's going again for another year, and I think they've kept the majority of their squad too, and they've added like a couple of others, like Maria O'Sullivan, a keeper as well, which is always a vital position. And yeah, I think I think they can really be pushing on. Maybe they'll look, obviously they won the All Ireland Cup last year, so I'm sure they'll be looking to retain that, and hopefully it'd be nice to get to the FAI Cup final too. But like you mentioned, Bows, I think, seem to be the squad who have added most probably in the off season. They've picked up a lot of players from other Dublin clubs, and they have a lot of quality in there too. So I think they'll be definitely ones as well that might be pushing on. Whereas DLR, we haven't heard too much about in the off season, but that could just mean they're keeping themselves to themselves, and who knows where they'll be then come the season.
Yeah, and then towards the bottom, of course, Treaty United under the new CEO, also Ciara McCormick, seems to be an ambitious club across the club as well, and obviously a change of colours as well, which is harking back to the blue of Limerick. And then they have a new manager, of course, with the former Ireland international Dominic Foley. You have Cork City, who have, I suppose, underachieved as well in recent times, and then Sligo Rovers, who've done okay since they've come into the league. So there will be a little bit of pressure to avoid that bottom step on the ladder as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. There always tends to be, the way the league has worked in the last few seasons, it's almost a 3-tier league, in that there's always the title challengers and then the ones mid-table, and then, like I said, the ones kind of towards the bottom of the table. But those at the bottom always are trying to get out of there and get into that mid-table block. And like you mentioned, I think Treaty will definitely be ones to surprise. They've had some good pre-season results already, and they've like an array of internationals after coming through, predominantly Canadians, with Ciara's influence there as well. So I think Mary Curtin is involved too in the background. So the two of them, and like I said, Dominic as well, I think they'll be a complete new package, and I would expect them to be nearly up the more towards the top end anyway than they were last year. And yeah, like you said, the likes of Cork and they're doing, and Sligo as well, they are doing great work. So you know, who knows? I suppose it's always hard to know, and you know, they're not necessarily publishing everything they're doing online. So you know, they're going to be, like I said, they're going to be all improving, and year on year, that's the one thing that we have seen, is that the standards of the league has improved overall. So it's really hard to call, and I wouldn't want to put a, you know, a first through from the top to the bottom on it, because it's actually impossible, and that's what makes it great. I think we've seen a lot of competitive games throughout the years, and a lot of them have happened to be on telly as well, televised games, and TG Carragher too, so that always helps when there's a bit of drama to add to it.
Yeah, so I'm just crossing out the predictions question there. But yeah, it is so hard to predict. Actually, looking at the last few seasons, it always seems to come down to, apart from maybe last season, the other couple of seasons always seem to come down to the last kick or the last game, and it has this habit of being quite dramatic with 4 or 5 teams in it.
It has, and I mean, a lot of leagues across the world, they can't say that, you know. Although, yeah, they may have really strong top 2 or 3 teams, there is usually a lot of hammerings as well, and that's one thing that we're not seeing. You know, in years gone past, you would have seen at least a few 10-0s or 7-8-0s, you know, where teams just basically have to show up to be given the points. But that's definitely not the case now, and we have seen that particularly last year as well, with just any team at any place in the league been able to take points off the top, and usually that's how the title race is determined. Actually, it's not against the results against the top teams themselves, it's who messes up against the lower end of the table that really becomes vital in the last couple of games of the season.
Yeah, I suppose a final point before I let you go, just in terms of as you mentioned, it's getting more competitive all the time, and there is a progression. Do you feel the league is really tapping into that? I suppose that I guess atmosphere that's out there, that's surrounded the rise of the national team, which is sort of gained attention by getting to the World Cup last year, and coupled with that as well, what would you like to see the league sort of push on and, I suppose, take full advantage of what's happening around it?
Yeah, I think we can probably piggyback even more maybe on the national team success and the kind of the limelight that's on them now. And so it is difficult when there aren't players in the league necessarily been called up every time to the squad. You know, there are, like I mentioned, the few girls at PMET now getting they got a late call up to the last squad, and it is important, I think, because they definitely do bring more kind of limelight and spotlight to the team. And when girls can see them on TV with the national team, then they want to go and watch them in their local place as well. But yeah, I think it's just all about promotion really, and trying to kind of just keep the standards up as well, like from within the clubs themselves, and I think that's definitely been shown, because once the product kind of on the pitch is improving, then people who do come watch a game, and I think people are always surprised when they come to see a game, the quality of the standard of the league, and then it does always attract them back as well. I think it's kind of, there's always a bit of a kind of a family atmosphere at games as well, so it's definitely a good place to bring you know, the whole family, not just young girls but boys as well.
Yeah, and I suppose as well, there's, I guess, that added layer of a lot of the top players in the league have gone across to England and established themselves as well. And I mean, we've seen Tara O'Hanlon now going across to Manchester City. Now, she mightn't start playing straight away in terms of the first team, but that's, I suppose, a sign of the quality that is here.
Exactly, and you know, she's gone over so young as well, and I think that comes down to the academy system, the under-17, under-19 leagues that have been in place now for the last number of seasons, and that definitely helps, because when they're coming up, before when they'd come to senior level, they may not be ready, but now they do seem to be have those years of competitive football behind them, and then they're ready to go you know, abroad. And we have seen, I suppose, in the last transfer window as well, girls maybe going over to the WSL maybe a little bit early, and now they're kind of having to go down to the championship to get game time. I think that's important for them, because they do need to be playing to be trying to get back in the national team too. But yeah, I think it is a testament to the league that we've been able to produce so many players who can go on and have professional careers as well. But you would wonder just if we could kind of do a little bit more to maybe keep them at home for another year or two, you know, with implementing some kind of scholarship schemes or that type of thing as well, just to keep them in the league maybe a year or two more, just so then they're definitely ready when they do leave.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, the new season kicks off this Saturday, and also the draw for the Euro qualifiers is on Tuesday. Méabh De Búrca, thanks for your time.
Thanks a million.
All right, so that was Méabh De Búrca, former Republic of Ireland international, previewing the upcoming SSE Airtricity Women's Premier Division. Now we're going to turn our attentions to the League of Ireland, and obviously it was a weekend that was weather affected. On last Friday, Bohs and Dundalk, that was called off due to the snow. We had Derry City beating St. Pat's live on RT2, and that was a 2-1 result there. Hoban scoring the equaliser, and then Danny Mullen with the winner late in stoppage time. Galway United got a win over Waterford. That was a 2-1 victory there. Shells were 1-0 winners of Sligo Rovers, and then Shamrock Rovers against Drogheda United, that was called off as well, also due to the weather. And I think, Jim, were you kind of caught out with the snow as well? Because I kind of woke up to it, and I had watched the weather the day before, which is not something I do very often, and I was definitely caught out.
Yeah, I think the weather forecast. Well, I was watching the BBC forecast, and they did mention about snow on high ground in Northern Ireland, and the forecaster said, well, most people don't live on high ground. Now, I live in quite close to Tala, so I'm up a little bit high is all right. But I woke up on Friday morning, and the place was all white. The place was covered in white. But funny enough, when I got home on Friday evening, I got home about 10:30, 11:15. Tala was completely snow-free, but obviously not. Obviously, it didn't clear in time for the game to go ahead at Tala, which is obviously disappointing. Likewise at Dalymount Park. But yeah, look, I mean, I think the weather people did talk about how difficult it is to predict snow, but and it often snows in this month, anyways. But yeah, I mean, it's disappointing that 2 games had to go by the wayside. There were a couple of games in the first division as well, but we did get the 3 games on Friday night, and we did have the live game on telly, and then we had a full program last night. So, like, I mean, we got 85% of the action over the 2 nights.
Yeah, we'll come back to the Friday night TV game very shortly, but just the results on Monday, as in yesterday. So Drogheda United got their first win of the season, beat Bohs 2-1. Sligo Rovers were 5-0 winners away at Dundalk. Shamrock Rovers and Derry City drew 2-2 in what was quite a pulsating second half, and then Shelburne continued their very good start with a 1-0 win over Galway United, and then Waterford back to winning ways and continuing what is, like Galway, a fairly impressive start to life in the top flight with a 3-1 win over St. Pat's. Now, before we talk about the Shamrock Rovers Derry game from last night, you were keeping a close eye, Jim, on Derry against Pats on Friday night, which was one of the few games, as you said, that did go ahead. And while Danny Mullen got the winner late on, the earlier part of the game, while it didn't really catch light until the second half. It was a story of 2 strikers after half time. So Rory Keaton with a great goal, and then Hoban doing what Hoban does best.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Keating's goal was wonderful. Like, I mean, a fine move, like just instinct, bang, shot, like corner of the net. And like, I mean, Pats, even though the opening 45 minutes was quite poor, I thought Pats did have the better of it, and they then went a goal up. Higgins made some changes for Derry, and in this corner comes in. Pat Hoban does what Pat Hoban does, rises highest and scores. And the game definitely did pick up after that. It was end to end to some degree, but Derry having the best of it. And then within the last throw of the game, this lovely floated ball comes across, and it's met by Danny Mullen, bang, in the back of the net. So, I mean, Derry, probably at the end of it all, on the basis of their second half performance, did just about deserve the win. You know what I mean? But I would say, Raf, the opening 45 minutes was quite poor, and for people that didn't, for people that maybe would have stayed at home to watch it on Friday night, it certainly wasn't a great advertisement for our game, but it did thankfully pick up in the second 45.
Yeah, and then Keith, last night you were on commentary for the Shamrock Rovers draw against Derry City 2-2. It was really in the second half where a lot of the action happened, and again the same goal scorers for Derry City. So Hoban, I know I'll play a clip of Stephen Bradley very shortly. I don't think he was too happy with the concession of the penalty, but he did admit it was Hoban's experience. And then Danny Mullen making it 2-1 from close range for a set piece.
Yeah, fairly similar. The first game, the first half, the first 45 minutes wasn't really great last night, but really difficult conditions. It was really boggy pitch. There was a swirling wind going around. There was driving rain. So both teams were trying to play a little bit of football, but it was really, really difficult. And as the game started to wear on, it became evident to me that this is a game for no mistakes. Just keep it really, really tight. Put the emphasis on the other team. Let them have the ball and just go and nick something. And it was really good. I thought Lee Grace had a decent game. He got a really silly yellow card, and then he went through and he went past one of the Derry players, and he went down, and the referee gave a free kick the other way and said he dived. And I thought, oh, that's very, very close to being a yellow card. And I just thought that was a little bit silly. But the really good one for me is I was having a close look at Darragh Burns the last couple of weeks, obviously coming back to Shamrock Rovers. The last 2 weeks or so, I'm watching him. He hasn't been great. He's been trying to get used to the Shamrock Rovers way, and he went in at left wing back last night, and he was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Every time he got the ball, he just whipped the ball into a decent area. He wasn't trying to pick anybody out. He was just putting it in there. I think it was Graham Burke arrived at the back post, should have really scored and pushed Shamrock Rovers ahead. And he just kept doing it time after time, putting the ball into brilliant, brilliant areas, creating brilliant chances, and it was dragging the Derry defence over towards him because he was becoming so dangerous. Yeah, I thought on the other side of that, Derry were good. As an away performance, it was brilliant. They went there, they slowed Shamrock Rovers down. They didn't really allow them to build up any sort of pressure. But I want the Shamrock Rovers to take it by the scruff of the neck. Having not played on Friday night, I thought they'll push the tempo. Derry went all the way with Shamrock Rovers. It was a last-minute winner, so really tough game for Derry. So Shamrock Rovers, I thought it was there to go and grab it by the scruff, but they sort of just went in patches. But they rose when they needed to. They reacted when it looked like they were going to be beat. Marcus Poon popped up with a brilliant header in the last minute again from a Darragh Burns ball in from the right wing this time. So I'm listening to Stephen Bradley. There's absolutely no panic in his voice. It took Shamrock Rovers 7 games last season to get their first win. So they're a million miles away from pressing the panic button. They've a couple of injuries that will obviously help them when they come back into the squad. Ferrugia is going to be a huge miss this season, but I think they can fill the holes and be okay without him. But the one thing they need is a 90-minute performance. So I'm looking at the front lads. Graham, Burke, Green, Gaffney look so dangerous, but in defence they do look a little bit weak. Set pieces coming into the box again. I know it was a swirling wind. It was windy. It was raining. I know all that, but they were so weak from set pieces that you're sort of looking and thinking, just get the ball out wide, put it into the box, and things will happen for you. Lopez will be coming back. I get that, so that sort of maybe will sort that one out for them. But I think people are looking at Shamrock Rovers, the likes of Pats, Dundalk, well, maybe not Dundalk after their result, but Derry are looking at them and thinking, maybe there's something here, maybe we can do something. Had Derry won that game last night and we weren't a million miles away from doing that, they'd have been 9 points clear. I know it's very, very early for all that sort of talk, but 9 points is not an insignificant amount, and I think they're 6 points clear now, which is not, after 4 games, it's a lot of points to be clear. So no panic yet for Shamrock Rovers, but they will need to get back on the horse pretty soon.
Yeah, we'll chat a little bit more about Darragh Burns very shortly, just about his best position. But first, let's listen to Stephen Bradley and also to Rory Higgins. So Stephen Bradley, as he said, no real panic in terms of the performance. I think he seemed relatively happy. Wasn't as happy with the penalty that the Hoban won, but and then Rory Higgins sort of was rueing the fact that they didn't hold on for the win.
No, I think we are very good. I think we should win the game. Other than after we scored, we let them in the game for 15 minutes, 20 minutes. We came off it. Other than that, we should win the game. Obviously with 2-1 down later on, you take the point. But when you look at the game as a whole, we're disappointed we don't win the game.
There was a
awful decision.
Yeah.
Awful decision. Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it back a few times. Honestly, incredible. Really poor decision. Probably summed up the performance, to be fair for me. To be fair to Hoban, he uses all his experience, waits there, but when you watch it back, it's awful. Yeah, really poor.
Rory, I'm sure you went through a range of emotions there in that second half in particular. Can you describe the night from your own point of view?
Obviously, when you go a goal behind in Tala, you probably accept the point at that stage, but when you get yourself 2-1 in front, with real bravery and courage in our play, and going into injury time, extremely disappointed that we haven't left with the 3 points.
It was shaping up to be like a carbon copy of Friday night, wasn't it? Having gone behind and then with the goal scorers and everything, you left feeling a bit of a case of what might have been there?
Aye, of course. Listen, we spoke at half-time about Dara Burns' delivery and stopping crosses from that side. We haven't stopped the cross and we haven't defended our back post well enough. And if you do that, you possibly leave with the 3 points, so it's disappointing from that end. But we had 2 days to prepare for the game, and we've shown real guts and bravery in our response to going a goal behind, and just bitterly disappointed for the efforts that the players put in that they haven't come away with 3 points.
So Derry City manager Rory Higgins there, and before that Stephen Bradley, his Shamrock Rovers counterpart. And then just back on Dara Burns, and it was just noticeable, as you mentioned, he was put out to wing back, which wouldn't be sort of his natural position, and it was on that right hand side, so he's constantly cutting in on his left foot, and it was kind of noticeable. Brian Maher a couple of times, I think for the Graham Burke chance you mentioned, first thing he did was to start roaring at Ben Doherty at left back for not closing down the cross, and then I think very shortly afterwards, about 5 minutes later, there was another cross from that side, really dangerous again, and Brian Maher's initial reaction straight back at Ben Doherty, and then of course he scores a right-footed goal, and then another brilliant cross from off his left foot from that same side for Marcus Poom's equaliser. But where does he really fit in? Obviously, it's horses for courses at the moment in terms of playing wing back because of the injuries that you mentioned. But where does he fit in that box midfield? Because he seems to pick up really good positions, but maybe is it a natural fit for him?
Yeah, look, the box midfield, I understand the concept of it. You're trying to get in and get the width from the fullbacks to come round, but I think his best position is on the wing. I think when you see his delivery, how he puts the ball into the box, wing back, it looks tailor-made for him, because you can't really mark a wing back because they start so deep down the pitch, and when the play builds up, they arrive on the scene and just whip it in. So there's no real marking him. It could be a great one for him, although at Pats I've seen him play, probably as a left wing forward or a left winger, and he looked really dangerous, or maybe on the right as well. So I do think that's his best position, but there's no reason he can't turn into a modern day left wing back or a right wing back. And I get Brian Maher having a go at Doherty, but you have to understand the angles of the game. If you're a left-footed player, as Dara Burns is, playing in the right wing-back position, when he has the ball, if he has it on his left foot, for Ben Doherty to get down into the channel to block that, he has to come so far across that he's leaving himself open for a pass, a little slide rule pass, or Dara Burns can just drive into that space himself. So the lesser of two evils for Doherty is to just say, well, I'm going to let you cross it and make sure you don't come in behind me. So it's really, really difficult to stop a left footer crossing from the right side because the angles are so difficult. But some time ago, I spoke to so many people about crossing. I used to hours and hours of crossing when I was a young lad at Blackburn. And the best crosses, David Bentley, I used to just hang out the back of him and learn from him. You don't pick people out. It's too difficult. You can't think, I'm going to go and put it on this fella's head from 60 yards away. You just put it into an area and tell them to go and get there, and they will do it. And he was doing that. You could see when he got the ball out of his feet, he wasn't looking up to think, where am I putting this? Who is it? Just feed it into an area. And if they aren't there, the coach will give them an earful. But players were there. They just didn't have that finishing touch. So I'm very hopeful that this now is a little start of Dara Burns, because as I said, didn't think he was great in the first 2 games for Shamrock Rovers. So brilliant last night, man of the match. And I think somebody who deserves another mention is Adam O'Reilly. He was right on the cusp of getting man of the match for me. When Derry were winning, I thought away performance for him, breaking up the play, so good, getting involved in everything, brilliant engine on him, starting attacks at times. But when Dara Burns sets up the second goal, you're thinking it has to go to him. He's been absolutely excellent. So a good mention for Adam O'Reilly, but Dara Burns was just ahead of him.
Yeah, now the last team that visited Tallaght before Derry City did was Dundalk, and it already feels like a very long time ago now, even though we're only talking about 2 or 3 weeks, Keith. I mean, a 5-0 defeat at home to Sligo Rovers. I mean, Sligo has probably been a team, and I'll talk to Jim a little bit about Sligo very shortly, but Sligo have been the team in the spotlight in terms of being under pressure when it comes to that, what we expect to be the battle at the bottom. Suddenly the focus is on Dundalk, despite having started very well on the opening night.
Yeah, it's such a strange league. It's very reminiscent of the Championship in some ways. That, you know, I'm looking at my phone last night when I'm at the Shamrock Rovers game and getting the updates, and I'm thinking, is this real? Like, it's all over the place. You know, people beating everybody. Shamrock Rovers, Jordan. But I'm looking at the league, and I think Waterford are strong. I think Galway are strong. I think they'll do enough to stay away from the automatic drop zone. I don't think they'll get 10th place, whatever about the relegations, the playoff. But you're looking at Sligo, thinking maybe they'll be there, maybe Drogheda, but Sligo seem to be fine. But you have to imagine that. I was looking at the Sligo team just before the start of the season, and I'm thinking, yeah, maybe they'll be all right. They've got the bones of a team there, but they need somebody to start scoring some goals. And then Max Mata comes in all of a sudden. You're thinking, ooh, here we go. And I know he hasn't, you know, he's not scored 10 goals already this season, but just his presence coming in the door, got 2 goals last night. It's just lifted the team. All of a sudden, they think everybody's expecting us to go down. There's no real expectation. Let's go and throw a few punches. And I'm delighted for John Russell, because I know he had a hard season last season. I would chat to him in Inchicore quite a while, and he'd be quite open to me about how tough it is for him and the expectations in the media. So the fact that he seems to now to be throwing a few punches, be outweighing people, it's brilliant. And I know there's a fairly strong fan base in Sligo, so they'll be delighted with how they started.
Yeah, and Jim, from a Sligo man's perspective, I mean, that must lift the mood. I mean, of course, it was a brace last night for Ellis Chapman, and then also for Max Mata, and also it seems the 2 games away from home so far, that's where the goals have come. The games at the showgrounds, I know the weather hasn't always been very good in recent times. That might have played a part, but it's at least, look, it's a very timely boost just at a time when there was a little bit of pressure building.
Yeah, because just to go back to the match last Friday against Shells, it was somewhat reminiscent of many of the games that Sligo played last season. They had quite a lot of possession, but they seemed to lack that, you know, cutting edge up front. And it was quite disappointing for them that they gave a goal away early on from a set piece. So they couldn't break Shelburne down. So then they head up to Dundalk last night. And I think John Russell said over the weekend, you know, he was quite happy with the way the team were playing defensively, but he did believe, and he did feel strong that goals would come. And certainly for anybody looking at their phones last night at half-time to think that it was 4-0, and you know what I mean, and for it to finish 5-0. But I think what was positive about Sligo last night was the fact that they just kept pressing and keep putting the Dundalk players under so much pressure. And I do think Max Mata, obviously, I mean, it was all about a bit of confidence in him, you know, because he probably did lack some confidence after coming back from Shrewsbury. But I mean, he's among the goals. And as Keith said, I mean, he's that kind of signing that people will look at, you know, or people did look at in advance of the season and say, yeah, Sligo could have a cutting edge here, because, you know, I do think as well, I mean, I know it's a cliche, but every point in this league and every win in this league is so important, because unlike last season where we all thought, and it did happen, that UCD would be the bottom team, that's how it's turned out. It's very hard at this moment in time. Yeah, there's possibly 3, 4, maybe 5 teams that you could think could end up bottom. And then there's obviously the team that finishes second from bottom that goes into a playoff at the end of the season. So I just think that every win is important. And for Sligo, coming up on Saturday next, they got Shamrock Rovers at home. And there's one thing for sure, I think there's going to be a full house in the showgrounds. And Sligo will be cock a hoop and maybe feed. I don't think they've beaten. Well, they did beat Shamrock Rovers back in May 2021. That was the last time they beat them. So they might feel up there that they're probably due a win over Shamrock Rovers again. And just finally about Sligo, it was their first win away from home since last May. So so that's quite a long while not winning a game away from home. Also as well, I think the last 8 games of last season, they didn't win either. So it is a timely boost, and it certainly does help the goal difference as well, because we to score 5 goals, you know, so hopefully Sligo can kick on.
Yeah, and speaking of cutting edge as well, so as you mentioned, Keith, Waterford looking strong, but I think someone had flagged it prior to the start of the season that Padraig Gammon coming back after about a decade away in England was a great coup for Waterford. And the way he started now, he scored a brace last night against Pats. That's 3 for the season now, and kind of that real fox in the box as well. And I know when he was over in England, it was the FA Cup particularly he had a wonderful relationship with, because I remember chatting to him about 3 years ago just about that. But a great experienced striker for the Blues to have now.
Yeah, I watched the highlights back in it. As you say, Raf, he's not exactly he's not a brilliant out ball. There's a lot of stuff that Patrick Hammond can't do, but what he does do, when the ball drops in the 18-yard box or anywhere in around a goal scoring vicinity, he's in and amongst it. He is a fox in the box. He'll hold the play up, and you don't play that long in England without having the basis of being a striker. You can get the ball into him, he'll hold it up, he'll win free kicks. He's decent in the air. He'll do a lot of good things for Waterford, and they've got so much pace on the wings as well that if you're going to have that threat of the ball into his feet and the threat of runners in behind, it's just a counter of both. So you can't, the blanket's not big enough to cover everything. You're going to either leave your head popping out of your feet. So Waterford have a lot of dangerous weapons in there. And again, I think they're going to be absolutely fine. It's obviously a very disappointing result for St. Pat's, but Asamoah, I've seen him. This is like a little road runner. He is. This fella is giving people 5, 6, 7 yards, knocking the ball past them, and still leaving them for dead. So when you're that quick, the game is so simple. You just run past people, and I don't think there'll be a lot of people that will go to Waterford and say, "Okay, let's play a low block," which plays into Asamoah's hands, obviously with his pace. So I think he's going to be a big player for Waterford this season, and if he stays fit, if Hammond keeps among the goals, I think they'll be absolutely fine. I've seen enough from them and Galway, to be fair, to think that it's not going to be straightforward for who's going to be bottom of the pile this season.
Yeah, and if Asamoah is the road runner, then Pats were kind of the wily coyote in that scenario. And Pitaluga looked a little bit shaky last night, but it's just Pats overall just seemed to have made a very, very slow start. Obviously the talent is there, and they did make a lot of changes to the squad during the off season. So maybe it's an element of needing players to gel together. Yeah,
look, it's the League of Ireland's very unique in that, in the off season there's always a huge turnover. You bring Rory Keaton in. I love Rory Keaton. I think he can do really well. But the one thing he needs is service. And as an ex-winger, if I look at Keaton, I think, lovely, I'll just get to the wing, I'll put it in from all areas, because he's such a big boy, so good in the air, that he doesn't even have to win the header. He can just put the other defender under a bit of pressure. There'll be second balls dropping everywhere. But Pats now, for me, have gone to this box midfield where when you win the ball, the two wingers come inside, and it's just clogging it all up for me. I think Pats on the wings are so strong. With Mulroney as well. I know Mulroney didn't play last night, but I think he's super delivery into the box. And yeah, it just hasn't clicked so far. Pitaluga in the goal. Again, I know the conditions weren't great. His handling didn't seem great for 1 or 2 of the goals. So he's kicking as well, come back. It just encourages Waterford and puts the Pats defence thinking, okay, well, that's a pass we don't really want to play anymore. So you're restricting what you can do. And the confidence, there's two new centre-halves gone in there, the new goalkeeper. It's going to take a while, but initially it hasn't hit the ground running. So there's a bit of work to be done. I think tactically there's a little bit more work to be done. Rory Keaton has been isolated at times. So a lot of work to be done. But again, same with Shamrock Rovers. You don't have to press the panic button just yet, but you would like to see it sooner rather than later, because you think that somebody's going to need a buffer, because when Shamrock Rovers come out of Europe, you would think they're going to hit the button here and just keep going and start collecting points. So somebody needs a buffer when we come out of Europe, whether that's Pats or Derry, remains to be seen. But poor start from St. Pat's, it has to be said.
Yeah, but on the other side of the Liffey, Shelburne, very happy. 2 1-0 wins in the space of almost as many days. And that was against as you said, a very good Galway United side who had done very well against Waterford on the Friday. Will Jarvis almost scoring a lovely goal, and then John Martin on the rebound to turn it home. And this is something a bit, obviously Damien Duff played under Jose Mourinho for a while, but it'd be something I'd say Mourinho from afar, Keith, would be looking at with a smile on his face if he looks the way Shelburne are playing. And I know their ambitions probably aren't going to be like challenging for the title. That seems probably a bit too early. But in terms of consolidating where they're going to be in those sort of European places.
Yeah, and look, the one thing I love about Damien's stuff, team, is like Damien was a real winger that could get people on the edge of their seats. He could do things, take people on. But when you look at his Shelbourne team, they just run through brick walls. They defend like it means something to them, and there's an art to defend. And I obviously was a winger as well, but I understand how hard it is to defend and how difficult it is. But, you know, when I was playing, somebody would make a tackle and it was like to make scoring a goal. They would jump up and celebrate, and it meant something to defenders. Now it's like defence has been bypassed. It's all about scoring goals and open, expansive football. But when you look at Damien Duff, somebody who's been there, done it at every level in the game, he's all about defence. You keep the opposition out and you take what you can up the opposite end. And it's not boring stuff, because he will play a little bit of football if the opposition decides, okay, well, we'll sit in our 18-yard box because Shelbourne are just going to throw balls in. They'll start playing a bit of football. They'll get you out to them, and then they'll go and hit you in behind. So the recovery runs are brilliant. I think Sean Gannon is going to be a really good signing for them. I think it's a very astute signing as right back. And it's brilliant. You know what? Sometimes as a coach, as a manager, you can go and win at, like Sligo did, 5-0, and you sort of a little bit lucky, a little bit of everything. Everything went for us there. But a 1-0 win where you restrict the opposition to one shot on goal and you don't have an awful lot of shots yourself, but you win it. It's more the fine detail within the coaching that gets you there. And look, people are saying all sorts to me about Damien Duff, he's not ready. I've seen enough of it. The way he's transformed the Shelbourne team, not on a lot of money. I know there's a bit of money going into the club right now, but last season he gets them into Europe on a shoestring budget. On paper, there's an awful lot of teams better than Shelbourne, but they rise their levels every single time. And it's because of the man management. And I do see elements of Mourinho winning, like the start, or sometimes if the game's not really, if nothing's happening, you look down at the bench and Damien Duff will be waving his arms and you get a little bit of entertainment off of him in his press conferences. He's brilliant, he's great to listen to. And he's so honest. He doesn't really give you the bells and whistles. He just tells you this happened, he should have done better. We weren't great in that and we were excellent there. So I love Damien Duff. I think he's absolutely excellent for the league, and the way he's transformed Shelbourne is excellent. I can't wait to see how they do in Europe, Raf. I really can't, because they've earned it. They deserve to be there, and I hope they do themselves proud on the league.
Yeah, and a final one from the Premier Division. So a win on and off the pitch for Drogheda United on Monday. So they beat Bows in the evening, and they sort of turned the tables on their own shortcomings from the previous week, where set pieces had been the Achilles heel, where they weren't tracking runners against Waterford, and then this time 2 awkward balls in, particularly the second one, which was from much further out, that overturned Bows in a 2-1 win. But the big news there, and Keith, you know this stadium, I think, better than either myself or Jim would, but Weavers Park, they've managed to secure the purchase from the FAI of that ground with the help of the club owners, Travella Group. That is a ground that needed a facelift, but they're going to be doing quite a bit of work on it in the future, and hopefully the fruits of it are going to benefit the club.
Yeah, it's a strange old stadium. It really is, because I liked playing there for some reason. The pitch is nice. It's level. The fans get behind you, but the dressing rooms are run down. You walk out the side of the pitch. It's just not, it's not up to standard. It's nowhere near the standard. So it's great that they've been able to buy it. I hope they'll put a little bit more money and give it a facelift. But Drogheda, that's a big win for them. You know, you're looking at Bows and you're thinking, I seen Bows against Pats a couple of weeks ago, and you're thinking, Bows are all right if they could just be solid defensively. They've got enough up the top of the pitch to cause everybody problems. But like when the weather is like it is last night, you don't have to complicate the game. You don't have to be nice and pretty. Put the ball into decent areas. Defenders will make mistakes. It's wet. It's slippy. Things are going to happen. Just put the ball into grey areas, and if you try and keep persistent with the nice football in those conditions, more often than not, you will come undone. So it was just sensible football from Drogheda. But I know last week, the week before, they were not happy with, the basics of the game, Raf. As you say, tracking runners like that, that's not acceptable. You can't just decide. Sometimes if a fella doesn't see a run, you think, okay, we need to work on his positioning because he has a spot at the run. But when fellas are seeing the runs and just deciding, I'm not going to go with it, or not smelling the danger, you have a real problem there. So it's great that they've been able to bounce back. And again, it just makes the bottom of the league, you think, well, who is it going to be? Because there's no obvious candidate just yet. And hopefully it's not my old club, Drogheda.
Yeah, just on the stadium, the co-chairperson Drogheda United, Joanna Byrne, she said, this is a momentous day for Drogheda United. We are now finally in control of our own facilities and our own destiny as a football club. We will continue to welcome supporters to the ground in the interim and work diligently to develop a new stadium for the club and community. And fixtures this coming Friday, Bows and Shells are going to be playing at Derby at Dalymount Park. Galway United are hosting Drogheda. St. Pat's are up against Dundalk, and then Derry City up against Waterford. And then, as Jim mentioned earlier, on the Saturday, it's the Battle of the Rovers up in the showgrounds. So Sligo Rovers against Shamrock Rovers. That is Saturday evening. And then in the first division, there were 3 fixtures that went ahead on Friday, which was Cork City beating UCD 1-0, Finn Harps 2-0 winners against Athlone, and then Treaty United, 3 wins from 3 now, and currently top of the table in the second tier, 1-0 winners at Kerry. But before we go, we have live Champions League coverage tonight, so that's Bayern Munich against Lazio, live on RT2 and RT Player from 7:30. Bayern Munich trailing 1-0 from the first leg and not going well in the Bundesliga at all. Obviously, having lost the first leg as well, but Jim, Harry Kane left Spurs to go to Bayern, probably thinking that that's a guarantee of trophies, given how Bayern have won every single league title now. I think it's 10 or 11 in a row at this stage.
11, yeah.
And we're not working out quite that way. The Champions League, even if they get over tonight, that looks unrealistic. The Bundesliga, a club that never wins the league or has never won it to date, Bayer Leverkusen are 10 points clear of them, and they're not even in the German Cup. So obviously he's had a very good season individually, though, at the same time.
Yeah. Well, maybe at the end of it all, I'm not sure whether people in Ireland would like this. Well, maybe at the end of it all, he'll be on the English team that will win the Euros come the middle of July. But we don't know. No, like, and in fairness, Munich, I mean, they haven't been good this season, but how ironic it would be that the team that are probably going to win the Bundesliga, Bayer Leverkusen, managed by Xavi Alonso, that could he end up being the next Bayern manager? I know that Liverpool are keen to get him as well. So no, it's been like Harry Kane's a brilliant footballer, a brilliant scorer, but what he was probably never going to get with Tottenham was to win a title, and it's very, very unlikely he's going to do it in his first season at Bayern. But I don't think Bayern's problems probably aren't up at the top of the pitch. They would seem to be back in defence. I think they've been far too leaky all season.
Yeah, and then Keith, the Manchester derby on Sunday. Marcus Rashford scores an excellent goal to start it off, but Phil Foden, I mean, what a player. I mean, the last season was all about Erling Haaland and Kevin De Bruyne and that connection between those two, but with Erling Haaland's form being fluctuating and amid injuries, and then Kevin De Bruyne having been out for so long, Foden's really grasped the mantle here.
Yeah, Foden he's been absolutely unbelievable, and I've obviously a lot of United fans in and around the family, and I thought United were really, really poor. I thought Rashford was poor, and it's a difficult thing to say when somebody scores a goal like that. Everybody just says, "Oh, Rashford was brilliant." He wasn't. There was one chance where he breaks the defensive line and the ball, he just has to head it in front of him and get after it, and he misheads it, and Kyle Walker comes back and gets it on him. There's one where he's probably in a 60-40 race where he just has to take a good touch across Kyle Walker and he's in on goal again. Kyle Walker just takes a little bit of his arm and he falls over. He takes the easy option. It was never ever a foul. I thought he had quite a poor game, given he scored an outstanding goal. You'd have thought his confidence would have been up. He'd start running around, putting tackles in, but he went into his shell again. I thought he was really, really poor. And that was the only shot United had on target within the 90 minutes of the game. It was totally, totally dominant from Manchester City. 74% of the ball. The Haaland miss when he's 2 yards out and he puts it over the bar. I had my head in my hands, but there's an inevitability to it, Raf. Like when certain people miss, you think, "Oh, are they going to get another chance?" But you just know with Haaland, he will score. So I wouldn't, you never have that doubt. And I know it was you're playing out in the back. Rodri wins it and gives it straight to him and he score. But see, even those little things at the end, that little chip ball into Amrabat from Casemiro. What a ball to receive in the last couple of minutes of the game when Manchester City are hunting all over the pitch. You're going to chip a ball into somebody with no pace in and around their throat. This is nonsensical stuff, really nonsensical stuff. So Manchester United for me are, a million miles away. They're a disjointed team, half the team. All the stuff that Carragher has said about them is right, about the units pressing and half the units not pressing. Hoyland is obviously a huge miss for them, but you can't just say, Hoyland's the miss and when he comes back things will get better. There's a whole host of things. Casemiro, for me, he's starting to look, Father Time is starting to catch up with him. He's not getting around, and maybe that's because of the amount of space in and around him that it's been really highlighted that he can't get around. But You know, at times he was playing as a centre half on against Manchester City. He was just in there. He gets 1-2 by Phil Foden, but in that moment where you're thinking, when Haaland misses that chance, you're thinking, right, City needs something. And when he comes inside, hits it with his left foot. Initially, you're thinking it's not bad defending, but half a yard at that level can kill you. It's a brilliant, brilliant finish. Then the 1-2 in and around Casemiro, it's devastating stuff. It really is. And again, there's this inevitability of it. I just never panicked that United were going to beat them. When Rashford scored, I thought, oh, this would be interesting, but there was an inevitability that was coming. City are just too good for me. And as good as Arsenal have been, City are just a machine and will just keep churning these wins out.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. I mean, Arsenal played brilliantly last night, and they have been in terms of the scoring streak that they've been on, and they're only 2 points off Liverpool, and City are right in between that. But you mentioned Carragher, the Carragher punditry piece, which I thought was very good, which was, I think it was in the build-up, so it was on the Monday leading up to this Manchester derby, Keith, and but the thing is, Erik ten Hag made a point of reacting to it, and then I think there was also something about a social media post that Fulham had put out about Bruno Fernandes, and I don't know, a manager responding to sort of that sort of outside noise and specific things, do you feel it's a little bit unwise, perhaps?
Yeah, it's unwise because on bound accounts, Erik ten Hag is wrong. I have to be honest with you. In my opinion, he's wrong because what Carragher said about the units is totally right. He's right. The back four is dropping off, and the front six lads are going after people, which inevitably leaves a huge, huge hole in the middle of the pitch, and that's where United are getting hurt. And when you look at the Fulham post, yeah, okay, maybe it shouldn't have been done, but the reason it was done is because their captain is rolling about on the ground pretending to be injured when he's not injured. And Raf, they've changed the wording on this stuff so much. When I was playing, it was cheating. Then it was diving. Then it was simulation. Now it's, oh, well, he's felt contact and he's being clever. He was rolling about on the ground like he's really hurt. One of my mates sent me a clip with the Benny Hill music going over. And then he jumped back up looking for the ball. It's you know, if you're going to bypass that and say Fulham need to apologise, he's pretending to be injured. He needs to get up. He's the captain of Manchester United. We didn't see Roy Keane, Yap Stam. We never seen people like do that at Manchester United. And look, you can say, oh, well, it's the way it is in football now. But I think if you're going to be a Manchester United captain, you have to be more than talented. You have to be a role model of people. And that's not what we want to see. And I'm involved in the underage structure of the game. And we do see that, you know, because they're watching people in the Premier League do it rolling about, pretending they're hurt and trying to get free kicks. And then they jump back up and nothing's wrong. And look, I've heard Sean Dyche speaking about this. The only deterrent for diving is a yellow card. And very rarely do players get a yellow card for diving. So why not roll the dice? Why not just throw yourself on the ground and hope you get something? Because now VAR will go through it with a fine-tooth comb and look for any reason to give you something. So look, the game's gone absolutely mad for me, but Erik ten Hag was wrong on both accounts there. I think Carragher was spot on, and his captain shouldn't be diving in the first place. Yeah,
and then Jim, the Liverpool game against Nottingham Forest. Again, there's this inevitability about the way you know, Klopp's team, even with all the injuries they have, they just seem to keep finding winners. Apart from the game they lost against Arsenal, they've been on a brilliant run. But the Nottingham Forest are not happy, obviously, about the decision at the end where the ball was given back to Liverpool, where they had been in possession and a player had gone down. I think it was Konate.
Konate went down.
Yeah, Konate went down. But in a sense, while they're probably correct on the rules, a lot of time passed between that and when the goal went in, and they had chances to clear the ball too.
Yeah, Raf, I think 100 seconds had passed between the time that decision was made to give Liverpool back the ball and the actual goal going in. Yeah, and Forest did have two chances to clear the ball. So the ball then comes back out to McAllister and he whips it in. And for the whatever stat, I think they're very impressive stats that for Liverpool this season, with them scoring goals quite late. And look, I mean, this is going to be a brilliant three-way title race. But just in terms of, just to go back to the Irish manager, John O'Shea was asked yesterday by Tony O'Donoghue about the goalkeeping situation. So we have Kelleher and Gavin Bazunu. And again on Saturday at the City Ground, I thought Kelleher, you know, because Forest did have chances. I thought he was excellent, and he has been excellent. I mean, in fact, he's had a really good week especially his performance in the Carabao final was excellent as well. And so he's going to be guaranteed 4 more games between now and the international break. So it'll be interesting to see whether John O'Shea picks him between the posts for the 2 upcoming friendlies, or maybe for the first one, or maybe play Gavin in the second one, or vice versa. So we don't know. But Kelleher's form has been excellent this last week.
Yeah, and he'll need to be on great form. I suppose we'll finish on this, Keith. And he's, City are going to Anfield on Sunday in what's going to be not decisive given the time of the season we're in, but it has huge implications nonetheless on where the Premier League title race goes, especially with Arsenal lurking behind them as well. How do you see this game going? Because Liverpool do have their issues with injuries and they're not going to be at full strength, and City just seem to be building momentum, even though there's a touch of vulnerability to them. They are leaking the odd goal here and there.
Yeah, again, this could go either way, Raf. I think, Liverpool will go and stand on the halfway line when Manchester City have the ball, and when Liverpool have the ball, Manchester City will go and stand on the halfway line. There'll be an awful lot of spacing behind both teams, so anybody who times a third man runs after the ball, there's every chance they'll get something. But I would be leaning towards Manchester City if both squads were fully fit. The fact that Trent is going to be missing Alisson, Jota, Curtis Jones, Matip, Salah, Gravenberch, you're going to lean towards Manchester City. And I'm looking at Haaland and De Bruyne, the way them two are linking up. They scored the 5 goals against Luton. I think we're really starting to look at now the best duo in the Premier League has ever seen. I know in terms of numbers they're not quite there, but if they get another 2 years together, I think they'll be far and above the best duo that this Premier League has ever seen. So I think we're going to get a great game, really high pace, high tempo, blood, sweat, thunder, tears. We're going to get everything in that game. But again, I just think Manchester City will poke their head above water. And with the Nottingham Forest, to go back to the Liverpool and Nottingham Forest game, look, at the hot ball it's wrong. The referee got it wrong. But as you say, there's 100 seconds in there, and Awani has the ball on the edge of the Nottingham Forest box and then loses it. So if I was in the Nottingham Forest dressing room, I might be more annoyed with me Nottingham Forest striker saying, you're on the edge of the 18 box, and the 18 yards box with a minute to go in the game, and you decided to go on a dribble. That's silly, stupid stuff, and they paid the price, because if he kicks that ball 70 yards away, the referee blows the full-time whistle and it's game over. But he gets a little bit too greedy, thinking can be counter-attack. So maybe Liverpool have just got one back. You remember the Spurs game, the offside goal that was disallowed, the only defeat they had before then. Maybe they've just got one back. These things do seem to weigh themselves up over the course of their season. So Liverpool maybe just getting that little bit of luck back that they deserved.
Yeah, and that brings us to a close for today. So, of course, as I said, live Champions League coverage this Tuesday night, as in tonight, Bayern Munich against Lazio. And then also by the time this podcast comes out, we'll know who the Ireland women's will be playing in the Euro 2025 qualifiers. It's going to be a tough gauntlet, whoever they get. Obviously, the nightmare scenario would be Spain, England and Sweden. But Ireland have held their own against the likes of Sweden, for example, already. So we'll see how that goes anyway. But Jim, thanks very much for coming on.
Raf.
And Keith, thanks for your time as well.
Okay.
Hello, Raf.